if you believe marriage was a place that was created for you to go to be instantly happy, supported, loved, secure, and sexed up, if you believe that that was the contract you signed on your wedding day, till death do us part, then you're going to have a set of expectations that are wholly unrealistic because you believe the purpose of your relationship is to get love and to get intimacy and sex. And one of the best definitions of marriage I ever heard was that it was invented as a place where two people get to learn how to love. Learn how to love.
Welcome to the Masterful Man podcast. I'm your host, Sven Masterson, coach, mentor, author, and fellow traveler on the path to mastery. Every man reaches the point where he knows he can't keep living the way he has been. The question is, what comes next? Here, you'll hear from men who've made the shift, men who've gone from stuck to unstuck, unshakable, and unstoppable. If you're ready to start moving forward, you're in the right place. In today's episode, I'm talking with Steve Horstman, a longtime friend, fellow coach, and co-author with me of a book called Narcissist or Not. Steve and I have both spent years helping men become emotionally mature leaders, especially when it comes to love and intimacy. But today, we're not offering surface-level advice or gimmicky communication hacks. Instead, we're diving deep into a topic that most men misunderstand: emotional safety. What does it actually mean? Why is it so critical in a relationship? And how does a man become emotionally safe? Not to fix his wife or save his marriage, but because it's who he chooses to be. If you've ever felt confused by your partner's emotional waves, frustrated by emotional gridlock, or unsure how to lead with strength and love at the same time, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Hey, Steve, welcome, and thank you for being on the Masterful Man podcast.
Thank you for having me, Sven. I'm happy to be here.
I've been looking forward to this for a number of weeks. It's been probably about a month in coming because of schedule alignment. And so for the listener, you are Steve Horstman from Good Guys to Great Men, a personal coach and mentor of mine, colleague, good pal, fellow Maryland resident in the past. Did you ever, I don't know if this was a Maryland thing. Do you remember Click and Clack, the car guys?
Well, yeah, the Mascioli brothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know more than I do. Was that just like a Maryland thing or was that nationwide?
I think they had the Atlantic Seaboard.
Okay. Well, when I thought about having you on today, I thought, it'd be cool to have Steve come on and talk about this topic of emotional safety, like we're Click and Clack a little bit to a degree.
An automotive problem.
Yeah. I used to love that show as a kid. Well, for one, because I liked cars a little bit, but I just loved the way that they were with the listener, with each other. They had an easygoing, fun, comical vibe. And I thought, hey, let's have that kind of conversation about a topic that can be really confusing to men. I know it's a topic I was confused about for a lot of years. And that's this topic of emotional safety. So what I'd like to do is click and clack that a little bit, talking about what emotional safety is, how we each see it, and then just kind of talk about what our experience is talking to men about emotional safety. So you being the guest, I'll put you on the spot first and say, how do you define emotional safety today? Let's start there, and then we'll talk about maybe how you did 20 years ago.
How do I define emotional safety? Okay. About 12 years ago, I wrote an article. It was a popular article called "A Man's Job is Creating Emotional Safety." I wrote that for the Good Men Project. I got a lot of positive comments. And of course, I got a lot of trolling comments saying that is not a man's job. A woman needs to be emotionally safe with or without a man. It's not a man's job to take care of that. And so, as you and I know, people get into who's responsible for what. So in the context, and context is everything here, we're not talking about emotional safety of a dog or a horse or a child. We're talking about the emotional safety and the feelings of emotional safety. Feelings is important here, that word feelings. Inside a grown adult woman who is in a romantic, committed, passionate love relationship with a man. We're talking about a heterosexual woman in relationship with a heterosexual man, normally marriage or a committed relationship. This is a kind of relationship where feelings of safety, security, belonging, and connection and love, where those feelings can be threatened at any time based on behaviors or feelings or words or actions. And so one of the biggest complaints you and I get from clients is that she says she doesn't feel safe with me. She says I'm not her safe person. She says that she doesn't feel like she can be vulnerable with me or be open-hearted with me, that she doesn't trust me. And so guys say, what is this whole emotional safety thing? What does it actually mean to a woman, this woman I'm married to feel emotionally safe? And this is the definition we like to give. It is the feeling that her feelings, the way she verbalizes, expresses, reacts, and responds to the world, to all the stimulus around her, her parents, her mother, her kids, her life, her hunger, her menopause, the way that she experiences life and the way that she shows up in who she is, that she feels incredibly safe in that she feels accepted. She doesn't feel judged, disapproved of. She doesn't feel belittled or criticized. She feels like she is loved for who she is as she is, and she doesn't have to pretend or adopt a different persona in order to make other people happy, which makes them feel unsafe if they have to pretend to be somebody they're not. So if you're a man who wants to create emotional safety, you have to learn how to be the kind of man who creates an environment for this woman where she feels a sense of acceptance and unconditional love and a lightness and an easiness in being who she is, even when she's not at her best. That's how I would define it.
Oh, that was epic. That was epic. You used my favorite word for this topic, and that's acceptance. And I've used this metaphor when talking to other guests about other things. But when I'm talking to a man about how to understand this in a way he can relate to, I like to talk to husbands and fathers and say, okay, imagine coming home and you share your struggle with your partner and they tell you, hey, I don't have time for that shit. You need to go out and add another digit to your income. Most men would feel like they're just going to shut their mouth. They're going to stop actually expressing anything. And they're going to feel tremendous pressure. Like, hey, every time I do that, I hear how I'm not enough and how I need to be more to make her happy. And for some men, this is their experience, right? But that's like the closest thing I can say to help most men experience what it feels like to be a woman when she emotes something and she immediately regrets it because there was hell to pay for her doing so. Right. So I have a much simpler definition. I'm like the Chilton's Manual guy, right? And the click and clack for me, emotional safety, and I affirm everything you said, but I try to distill it because I have this mentor named Steve Horseman who's taught me to be simple and clear
Short and sweet, yeah.
and concise. To me, emotional safety is making sure that I don't change my emotions or behavior as a reaction to other people's emotions or behavior. And that's true, definitely in a romantic relationship, but also with my children, with colleagues, even a cashier at the grocery store. I want to have emotional safety. And for me, it's really comes down to I want to own my inner domain. I want to have sovereignty over who I am and not give someone else the ability to trigger me so easily, right? And it just so happens to be then, but if I maintain that space, and let's just say you can't provoke me, then I'm safe because you can tell me anything. And if I don't react to that, then you start to learn, hey, it's safe to tell Sven things. I can share with Sven. He's not going to judge me. He's not going to fly off the handle. He's not going to go spinning out into his emotions. And so by doing that, by not coupling my emotions and behavior to your emotions and behavior, or Zelda, my wife, that allows me to be grounded and trustworthy and safe. And so I did not used to be an emotionally safe man at all. And it was because I did have that tightly coupled. Like if my wife said something, I immediately would defend myself and whatnot.
Yeah. Sometimes we like to use analogies to help guys understand what a grown adult woman needs. You have to go to a different place to where you feel more familiar and more comfortable. And a lot of times I'll use the idea of a 2 or 3-year-old girl. It has to be a baby daughter who's just, she got away from you in the grocery store and you turn around and she's not there and you hear a crash in the next aisle and she's pulled something on top of herself and there's broken applesauce on the floor and she's crying and she just shit herself. And all these moms are around looking at you and you come around the corner with your cart and you scoop this daughter up. You scoop her up in your arms and you rock her and you hold her and she's screaming and she's crying and you look and you wink at all the other mothers and you take her outside into the sunshine as you dry her eyes and you tell her that everything's going to be okay. And when we tell this story to guys, I'm watching you smile now on video. That this scene where a man has to be incredibly strong and confident and self-aware and have a very strong connection to his paternalism for this child, his ability to protect and make safe this young kid. And every guy I tell this to goes, "Oh my God, I love that story." And oh, that happened to me. That same thing happened to me. And so here's the coaching question. Why is it so easy to do for a distraught 2-year-old and you can never do it for your wife? Oh, well,
Yeah,
that's a different question.
I'm smiling for a number of reasons. The first is because I remember the story. We were at this museum when my oldest daughter was maybe 7 or 8, and they had alpacas, and we were petting the alpacas, and the alpaca spit its cud right in her face, all over her hair and her mouth, and she just lost it. And it was one of those moments that you've met my sons and my daughters, right? So one of them had been filming and turned away at the last minute, and I wish they hadn't because it would have been America's Funniest Home Videos, right? It was perfect, but she was distraught, and I remember scooping her up and taking her inside and getting her cleaned up as much as I could. Her mom did a lot of that because of the ladies' room, but the point is that scooping up, I'm very familiar with that with 6 kids. The other reason I'm smiling is I reached out to you one time, the very first time we ever met, as a man in distress. And you actually encouraged me to picture Zelda as a young, at the time you said 13-year-old. And at that time, my oldest daughter was 13. And she looked at 13 like my wife did at 13. And just with that tenderheartedness I have towards my daughters, I don't know, something shifted for me. And you even asked me, you're like, what are you thinking? Like, what happened? Because it just, I don't know, it broke this kind of rigid wall I had built of contempt and resentment and frustration. And when you put it in those terms, it allowed me to connect with this paternal part of me, right? And I let it go. Like I have not resented my wife since, and that was kind of the beginning of us fixing our marriage. One thing I just want to say for someone listening, because women listen to our podcast a lot, they like it, no surprise, is that when we're talking about paternal, we're not talking about paternalism. Like women need men to make decisions for them and father them, but for men, because we do naturally have love for our children if we have children. To your point, it's easy for us to connect that, like, oh yeah, of course I love my kids, right? And if you can lean into that part, with your wife's face on it, it can oftentimes like allow you to overcome those hard feelings like it did for me.
Yeah. And I know I asked you, as I would of anybody, why is it so hard to do with Zelda? And it's not hard to do with your daughter. And every guy we talk to will say, well, if I'm going to be honest with you, in fact, this is really vulnerable for me to say, I can't believe I'm about to tell you this. The truth is, I'm afraid of my wife. I'm afraid of her. So, and we say, of course you are. Every man can be afraid of a woman. What are you afraid of? And we know the answer. I'm afraid that she's going to reject me. I'm afraid she's going to betray me. I'm afraid she's going to hate me. I'm afraid she's going to see me as an unworthy man. I'm afraid that she's going to not want me or desire me. right? And we go, okay, I've been there. We get that. But this is why your daughter doesn't threaten you. You have no romantic, loving sexual connection to your daughter. You have just a human
Right.
connection that you want to protect and provide for and be the hero. And there was a time when you wanted to provide and protect and be a hero for your wife. But after a while of being married, you start to learn she has superpowers that if you're not a secure man and you don't know how to be emotionally safe within yourself, her attacks on you will feel like threats. Her disapproval of you, her criticisms, her grievances, you'll start to take very personally. And this is when your ability to provide emotional safety dissolves. Because the
Yeah.
moment you feel unsafe, you can't be safe for other people, which is exactly how you started this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I talk to men about this is very similar in that, one thing you do with a wife or partner that you don't do with your children is you don't slowly in a relationship hand them your power, specifically your power to define your worth, your value, your worthiness for love, your acceptance, your manhood, right? And so we're constantly subconsciously handing our spouse or partner the ability to define who we are. That's what enmeshment is, right? It's like kind of you're losing your sense of self, and you start to define yourself in part by how your partner thinks about you. And so when she's angry, just the way my brain works, and I think a lot of men is, even though you might really want to hear her, the reason you're scared is because you're saying inwardly, oh shit, she's got all that stuff that's really important to me, right? So, like, I can't upset that apple cart because this is the source of my sense of well being. This is the sense, this is where I derive my worthiness for love. So, all these dependencies become a huge problem now because now I can't hear her complaint because I'm too busy worried about, like, are my assets going to be safe? That's just the way I kind of had a metaphor to understand it. It's kind of like, well, we're experiencing this even politically a little bit, right? If you if you don't have any resources as a country and other countries are upset with you, you might have to be kind of compromising and fearful when you relate to them because you have to keep the peace or you don't get your resources, right? So I had given so much of my worthiness for love to Zelda that I felt immediately insecure. Let's just call it what it is. If she was not if she was not happy with me. Right. So, like, that's what became my kind of go to. Like, I gotta fix that. And I don't have that with my kids because your kids don't generally define your worth. Although I would say if you don't fix these challenges, they will eventually as adults. You'll derive some of your sense of value and worth from them too.
Yeah. Even though I like to hold dads and parents up on a pedestal, that they're very strong people, we know there are some people who are incredibly intimidated by their kids, right? They make some really insecure decisions and have enmeshed relationships with their kids. But when we ask men to imagine yourself as a strong, calm, confident, deliberate, stable father, a grounding point for kids who might be dysregulated. Imagine yourself as that. Most guys love the identity of being a man who has that type of strength for their kids. But they don't imagine that for their marriages so much because, especially in the last 30 years or so, men have been led to believe that marriage should be easy. It's an equal 50-50, right? She should be trying as hard as I'm trying. And the moment you feel like things are out of balance, that like you're not getting your needs met, we tend to act a little adolescent sometimes. We go back into that grievance teenager mode. Well, I'm not going to do this until she does that, or I'm not going to try if she doesn't try. And you lose your identity to the idea that you're a grown ass, mature, confident, calm man who is there to provide love, even if somebody else isn't in a position to do it. And this is where we get the pushback. Like, yeah, but
Yeah, right. Yeah.
how long do I have to do this? Aren't I allowed to have expectations?
There's a lot of them. Let's do it. Let's talk about these yeah buts. And first of all, I love that the way I would summarize what I think I just heard you say is that you're not transactional in your love for your children. You don't have a ledger of like inputs and outputs, debits and credits. You just love them and you don't want anything in return. But with a partner, you treat it like a business partner. Like, hey, I showed up 40 hours this week. You need to show up 40 hours this week. So yeah, what are the yeah buts? I'm going to give you the first one that comes to mind because I hear this all the time. Yeah, but What's the effing point of relationships then? You hear that one ever?
What's the point if I can't what? If I can't have blank?
If I can't expect her to show up in this 50-50, you match every it's kind of like a 401k. Hey, I put 3% in. Where's your 3%, right? That's how a lot of men have been conditioned to think about marriages, was what I think I heard you say, is that it's equal deposits, equal withdrawals.
Yeah. And there's an assumption that in your first 5 years of marriage, guys are thinking, well, everything should be easy. Those are the formative years. If you believe marriage was a place that was created for you to go to be instantly happy, supported, loved, secure, and sexed up, if you believe that that was the contract you signed on your wedding day, till death do us part, then you're going to have a set of expectations that are wholly unrealistic because you believe the purpose of your relationship is to get love and to get intimacy and sex. And one of the best definitions of marriage I ever heard was that it was invented as a place where two people get to learn how to love. Learn how to love. The first 5 years of a marriage is one of the clumsiest, one of the most awkward and screwed up periods of a marriage where you don't quite know how to love each other yet. You know how you want to be loved, and you get a little upset about that if you're not getting your way. And so with guys that come to us in 10, 15, 30 years of marriage, and we say, have you learned how to love her yet? What do you mean by that? Yeah, but he goes, well, yeah, but shouldn't I be getting more? Does she feel loved by you? Have you learned how to love her? And so the prerequisite to getting what you want is knowing how to love. This applies to women too. For those women listening, if you're grieving that a man does not give you what you need or knows how to show up, does he feel as appreciated, adored, loved, and respected as he would really love to in order to give you those things? It goes both ways. We coach men because, well, one, I believe men have a deeper desire to learn and grow and please in the relationship than women do. Women like to be made to feel safe more than a man does. And so a lot of guys like problems to fix too. So that's why I like working with men. It's like, I can do this. I can do this. So yeah, but isn't this what relationship is all about? Relationship is all about learning how to love each other. And you have to go first. Why do I have to go first? Because.
Well, I wouldn't say I have some comments on that. I call marriage a maturation machine. That's been my experience in 33 years with the same woman, that it's not about happiness because, well, immediately, if marriage is about happiness, that's an indictment on every single person and a person who's unpartnered. And I don't think that's a good view. But it really has been a tool for maturing myself and Zelda. What was the other thing that you said that stuck out to me? About men going first. Most people probably come to both of us when they're in gridlock, emotional relationship gridlock. And like any gridlock, you don't solve gridlock by getting everybody to move at the same time. Like picture a big traffic jam on like a 12-lane highway. You can't move all the cars at the same time. You have to have a first cause, right? And it's my opinion also and perspective that men must go first. And here's why. Because when women go first, they usually do manage to free themselves, but they'll usually terminate the relationship in the process because they come to a place of saying, well, yeah, I got through that. And come to find out, I really want to be with a man who would do the necessary thing to go first if we're ever there again. That's just my perspective. I haven't found too many women that say, yeah, I want to go first in a gridlock. I think actually most women would say that they have tried to go first. But if a woman is going first and she's with an emotionally not safe man, she really has no recourse because every time she tries to live authentically, it triggers him and she'll end up shutting herself down. Yeah, that's just a little bit. So what's your next yep?
Well, it has to do with us asking men to, when I give this quote, that at the helm of every happy, healthy relationship is a happy, healthy man. And this implies that there's a leadership responsibility between the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. I call the man is the leading emotional indicator of the family and the marriage. He is the bellwether. He's the weatherman for whether or not today is going to be mostly cloudy, followed by a lot of rain, or today is going to be mostly sunny with a warm breeze in clear skies. We tell guys, don't wonder what the day is going to be like. Tell the day that what kind of day it's going to have with you. And that takes a lot of responsibility. The yeah, but is, yeah, but I don't always feel that way. Yeah, what if I need a little support? What if I have a bad day and I just want a shoulder to cry on? When do I get to vent and be the one to be listened to?
Mm.
How do you
Yeah.
answer that?
Well, that was me for a long time, so I think I could speak to that. First of all, I want to just go back and talk about this used to show up in my house. I used to be like living in that common cultural idea if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And that was our reality. And I would watch and it would piss me off. I would see a cascade where Zelda would get upset and then maybe she'd snap at the kids or me. I'd be upset. The kids are upset. Then the kids are like torturous to each other. And I get so angry and resentful because I did not see that I had a role to play here. I was reactive. I was not emotionally safe, right? So when she got like that, I just reacted. And then I lived in whatever her emotional weather was. So nowadays, I would say to a man like my former self or a man saying these things, this is why you need a brotherhood of men. Because we do have those times. I've had a pretty low day today and yesterday. But what I'll do in those low times, instead of, I mean, sometimes I do, like I share with my family at the dinner table, yeah, I just had a low day today, right? But in a crisis, if we were in gridlock, I would call you. I would get in touch with the men in my community, be like, hey guys, this is where I'm at today. Here's my emotional, cloudy, rainy sky. And the point wouldn't be to get fixed. The point would to get affirmed and validated, like, yeah, that's a normal human experience, right? But by taking it to the men, for me, Steve, it has given me the capacity to not put that burden on my wife, who she's already carrying a lot of the emotional weight. You know, there's a certain kind of weight that mothers carry that fathers don't. You know, the kids tend to be more dependent sometimes on mom in some ways, in the ways that she can feel like a little ducks are nibbling her to death, right? Um, so that's what I would say to a man, and I'd also would say that the whole situation becomes an opportunity for him to learn to cultivate his ability to choose his internal weather. Because even though we have shitty days, we still get to choose how we respond. And as soon as we start reconnecting with our decision making and our meaning making, it's up to us to decide, really, do I want to live in a bad day or do I want to live in a good day? And we think that it's out there that it happens, like, oh shit, today's a bad day, I guess I'm just stuck with a bad day. I know a guy's not generally ready to understand this on day one in coaching or in a community, but the work we do in our mentoring, I can't speak to yours per se, but I would slowly teach that guy just how much choice he has over that internal landscape. And in the meantime, to lean on men for support until he learns how to cultivate his own internal weather. How about you?
I'm thinking about the guy who says, yeah, but I don't have any men in my life like that. I don't feel emotionally safe with any of the men in my life. They're drinking buddies, they're football buddies, or hunting buddies, but I can't tell these guys anything. They'll just rip me a new one. When we get guys at retreats, they'll say, I've never been around other men I felt like I can tell my secrets to because
Mm-hmm.
I'm ashamed of them or I'll be shamed for it. So therein lies your empathy for a woman's emotional safety. If you've ever felt like you have nobody to talk to and that what you have in your feelings can be used against you or made fun of or shamed, that's how a woman feels. She wants to feel heard and understood for who she is, not to be criticized or judged. Most of us problem solving guys will enter a feeling relationship with, well, comma, I don't know why you don't just blank, or well, comma, I don't think you should feel that way. Well, comma, that's stupid.
Yeah.
This is how we respond, and this is how some guys respond to us. If you tell them something like, I had a really shitty day today, they go, oh, get over it, dude. Just get over it. All right.
Man up, right?
Man up, have a beer. Yeah. Everyone wants to feel emotionally safe. Men can learn to feel emotional safety and strength with other men. Women will tell us, and even Brene Brown's research says that women's evolution so far emotionally and spiritually hasn't been to the point to where they adore and just can't wait to help a man solve his emotional issues. She said, I'm sorry, men, but us women still get a little disgusted when you get overly vulnerable with us, even though our current culture says we're supposed to love it when you do it. But we
Yeah.
can't do two things at once. We can't be motherly to you and loverly to you. Pick one.
Yeah.
Because if you want intimacy and sexuality being overly emotional and unresolved, distress and having a shitty day, if you're relying on her to fix that for you, she might help you with that, but don't expect her to take her clothes off later, because when
Yeah,
she's in
yeah,
mother mode, she just won't want to do it. Most of our conversations start with loss of intimacy. It's hard to say that sometimes your loss of intimacy with your wife is because you're depending on her for every bit of solace in your emotional world.
yep. I don't think you've probably read this, but I just wrote a 5-part series called From Milk to Mastery that's all about this. And it's the idea of, as a man, learning to become emotionally weaned, because it seems like a lot of us take this desire for nurturing and mothering, and we pin it to her, right? And like, to your point, she'll meet us there, but she's not going to be interested romantically at the same time. And so if you're constantly taking this emotional need to her, she's going to be constantly in a mother mode. And what I find, Steve, is once a woman is a mother and she can connect those dots, because it seems cute to women maybe sometimes at the beginning of a relationship until she's had kids. Once she has actually had to get up in the middle of the night and breastfeed a baby or clean up vomit and stuff, and she starts connecting exhaustion and depletion and dependency with children, then she's like, wait a minute, come to find out, there's another person in my life that's just like this. And then it's like, it seems to break the romance for a lot of women.
Yeah. Yeah, but why do women get to be emotional with us? Why do we not get turned off as they do when they get emotional? That's because the masculine and feminine energies in a heterosexual relationship are wired differently. This is where we get into the differences. When a woman feels emotionally respected, emotionally safe, emotionally cared for, I'm not talking about babying her. I'm talking about being the kind of man who can say, I see you're hurting. I'm not sure what to say, but I'm here with you and I hear you and I've got you. We're okay. You're okay. When he can be like that, I'm not talking about treating her as a child, but treating her emotions as valid. A woman can get very turned on by that. She can get by that, and he gets turned on by her surrender to him. Like, I need you just to hold me. Well, that's pretty hot when a woman says, I feel so safe in your arms.
If you're resonating with this conversation and want to go deeper, I want to invite you to check out my book, The Resilient Husband. It's available now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other online retailers. It's a powerful guide for men ready to step out of emotional gridlock and into confident leadership in their marriage. And if you've been on the receiving end of accusations like, you're a narcissist, Steve and I wrote a book just for you. Visit narcissistornot.com to get the book or to take our free behavioral assessment. It'll help you see what's really going on and where your path to growth begins. Now back to the show. Here's the kicker. Most men are, and I'm saying this as a man who did this, most married men, especially if they're not emotionally safe, are probably rejecting 95% of the opportunities to be intimate, because it's not, they're expecting a woman to walk up in a lingerie and be adoring and this nurturing mother thing and say, let's just have sex right now. Like, this is the way the immature male mind is. But in reality, what happens is a woman is experiencing emotional range. And to most men, their programming says that is something to avoid. And so they're going to fight against it. They're going to flee it. They're going to try to fix it. And all of that is hurtful to a woman because it's not accepting her emotional state. It's trying to treat it like a problem to solve. And then as soon as you do that, now you're agitated, you're defensive, you're reactive. You feel rejected. You feel all these hard emotions. And then you can't figure out why you're not intimate as a man. Well, because you keep turning the foreplay into fights, right? So I was embarrassingly old before I figured this out.
Me too. I was older than you when I figured it out.
The upside of that, though, is if you're willing to have a shift in perspective, and maybe we could talk about the relationship to weather. then you start to realize, man, I actually have a lot of opportunity for connection and intimacy, the very things I want. But I have to learn to change my perspective about what's going on. Maybe you could speak to what that looks like. Like, what perspectives are hobbling a man about a woman's emotional state?
Well, as you know, I've often used horses as my metaphor for a woman, and I use horse stories. A man who knows how to deal well with a horse knows what horse language is. We like to be translators from when women say, I'm angry, sometimes what they mean is I'm overwhelmed or I'm exhausted. If they say, you drive me crazy, what they're saying is that I'm afraid you don't love me. When she says, I don't get any help around here, she feels like she's not good enough. But what men hear when they hear women explain things like that or express feelings like that, what insecure men hear is that you don't like me, I'm not good enough, I'm screwing up, and you think it's all my fault. And we're going, how did your ears come up with that? Was that the meaning you gave? Because what we do when we help translate women speak into what's really going on behind the curtain for her, men go, really? She's just scared? She's feeling overwhelmed. She feels inadequate. She feels like her mother's looking down from heaven and judging her. Is that what she's really? Yeah. Yeah. What if that's true? What if nothing that's happening here is about you? All she needs you to do is see the real source of her discomfort only needs to be held and validated, not to be fixed or defended. And most of us get defensive. We don't like to be told what we're wrong or we're at fault. So the first thing we do wrong is defend ourselves. And with
Yeah, but
horses, yeah,
yeah,
go
but
ahead.
Steve, why
Yeah,
doesn't she just say that? Why doesn't she just say what she needs?
yeah. And here's the empathy. Human beings have a hard time telling the emotional truth. Men don't do it either. Men use anger. Anger is a secondary emotion. We'll scream, we'll get in fights, we'll punch, we'll criticize, we'll scream, we'll yell. When really what we're feeling disrespected. We're feeling like we don't matter. We're feeling undesired. We're feeling unappreciated, right? But we don't say that. I feel so unappreciated. Men don't normally say that.
I think both parties, if you were to distill it down into its kind of fundamental source, is that it's always that we're both feeling unloved, or you could say ashamed, unworthy. Yeah, and it's really helped me to understand that concept that behind any complaint of really any human is a human not feeling loved. It's helped me as a father. It's helped me as a friend. It's helped me as even making YouTube videos or podcasts. Like we're going to get trolled with comments sometimes, and it's like it's really easy if you just look at the substance of those comments to like think that the words are representing what's really true, but really it's just an unloved person who feels like the best way to express their frustration is like an anonymous complaint on the internet, right? So it's no different than for my wife. And boy, that's changed things if you just live in that space. Oh, this is an unloved person. And also recognizing that for me, I don't think we oftentimes have the language to say, to your point, here's exactly what I'm feeling. It takes a lot of work to be able to develop your emotional vocabulary as a man, to be able to use precision and talk about it. And so do you think too, don't we all kind of project our internal narrative into what other people are saying? So like if I kind of have this internal dialogue that I'm a big disappointment and I'm not sure that people like me, value me, etc., then it seems like that becomes the filter through which I'm going to hear my wife's words about her experience.
Confirmation bias. We'll look for evidence to prove that our feelings are true. She doesn't like me. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't desire me. She doesn't find me attractive. Then we'll look for reasons to prove that that's true. No,
Yeah, that's that gridlock. Your reactions give me reactions, and now my new reactions give you new reactions. And it's just like this chain reaction. There was a time I wanted to die just because I was just completely done with that set of chain reactions. I felt like we couldn't go more than a few weeks without having some sort of big blow up from these cascades. And I would double down and do my best to sit still, pay attention to all the details, and I would hear them, but I was really focused on the words, right? And her words sure as hell sounded like critique. and complaints and all the ways I wasn't doing enough.
To bring in terms from psychology, when we talk about security or insecurity, attachment styles have a lot to do with how a man can create emotional safety or not. If you're an anxious, insecure man, you cannot create emotional safety for anybody. Kids, horses, dogs, or women. You can't do it. If you're insecure and anxious, you have a driving, pulsating need for somebody else to make you feel okay before you can ever feel strong enough or generous enough to help somebody else. You can't even put someone else's oxygen mask on first because you're grasping for your own. Now, a lot of our guys in our community are insecure, anxious men, just like I was and you were. We're insecure and anxious. Sometimes we partner up with women who are a little bit more avoidant. They're also insecure, but they get their needs met by distancing you, giving you the emotional stiff arm, rolling their eyes, and moving away from you. And this is a problem. This is why we only work with men. At some point, the best relationship is when both people do the work to come into a place of inner peace, well-being, and security so they can be strong enough and generous enough to give to the other person without feeling like they're in a competition. We only work with men because we know if you're an insecure, anxious man chasing an avoidant, insecure woman, you're kind of screwed for life unless something changes. And the only thing you have control over is becoming a secure man who knows how to invite an avoidant woman into a safe space.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the vast majority of men I work with are would be described as anxious pursuers, and I have a different perspective on this, not than yours, but then maybe what's out there. And that my observation is, I'm not sure that an anxious man marries or partners with an avoidant, but that he largely is responsible for creating it, because the amount of emotional pressure an anxiously attached man creates for her to fulfill his need feels like a massive amount of ongoing, never ending request for affirmation, validation, safety, soothing. That here too, like most women seem to be fine until they have children, and then they become really avoidant. And a man is, so then meanwhile, he's Googling this stuff. He's learning about attachment styles. He starts labeling her and he starts critiquing her. He starts judging her. He starts sending her articles. He starts reading books and videos, and he's sending them all to her, all basically saying, sweetheart, see, the problem is that you're avoiding me. Right. And so he chases, but it's not a romantic chase. It's a neediness and desperation chase. And so that seems to move her further away. And the reason I have this theory, Steve, is because I help, and so do you. I've helped a lot of men become securely attached who are anxiously attached. And the vast majority of the time, not always, but about 85% of the time, it will actually change the course of the woman from being avoidant to coming toward and also being secure. Again, not always, but more often than not.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, some people come through childhood pretty well scarred, either to be anxious, pursuing type personalities or avoidant. They learn that the best skill they have is to move away from vulnerability and criticism. But we don't give a death sentence to anybody. We believe if you want to change, you can. Some people believe people never change, men never change, women never change. They want to change. I think at their core, both men and women want to feel a secure attachment, a secure, loving, mutual, safe place of giving and mutual safety and adoration and respect. I mean, all these things I'm saying sound like a storybook, like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? It's totally possible when both people realize they have to let go of some of the insecurities they've had of the past, their protection mechanisms. Some of us anxious men would want to feel protected by pursuing sexual connection. If she would only have sex with me, that would pretty much solve all the problems in this whole marriage. Really? That one thing would fix everything? Yep, pretty much. Well, that's amusing.
No,
Let's get a cup of coffee and have a conversation about is that even possibly true? That if only we had sex 3 nights a week, everything, I mean everything, would be peachy keen. You might think so in your head, but for her, would that fix everything? This is why we want to be careful that this is not becoming secure is not a place where both people want sex all the time. It's a place where you can be seen and heard and valued for who you are.
right.
You and I both believe that sexual intimacy comes from a place of feeling safe and connected.
Yeah, I would say what you're describing isn't intimacy at all because, intimacy is into me see. And if you're after your wife to solve an emotional need, you're practicing commerce. You're practicing, exchange. That's not intimacy. Your goal is not to appreciate, and it's not an act of acceptance. It's not a display of safety and togetherness. It's not a willingness to see the inside of your partner. It's a desperate, needy attempt for them to see and accept the inside of you. And I talk to so many people who believe that's what intimacy is about. That's what sex is supposed to be, basically, this place to mutually feel better about ourselves by getting sexually validated. I would say that's a horrible recipe for a relationship. But it
Yeah.
seems to be peddled right now. I'm kind of amazed. I don't know if it's just that the people on social media are young and unpracticed in this stuff yet or what, but there's a lot of garbage out there right now.
Well, there's a lot of garbage around, whether it's religious, spiritual, biblical, or even social, cultural expectations that sex is the glue to marriage. Therefore, sex must be the highest priority to marriage. Therefore, you should understand that sex in a marriage is contractual, and that's what she agreed to. And if she's not holding up her end of the bargain, she's dishonoring the contract and God himself. Therefore,
Yeah.
she needs to work harder. I was like, you guys, is this what it's coming down to? Do you think this is actually? And of course,
Yeah.
if you're a
That
guy
sounds
with
so sexy and that sounds so appealing to me to hear.
yeah, and
Yeah.
as men, we both know there's a testosterone driven sex drive and libido that sometimes makes you so amped up sexually, you'll say things like that. You'll try to go to a business contract algorithm to figure out how to solve for sex. And it's funny. It's actually hilarious.
Yeah. I don't think that works real well. I haven't talked to too many people in the last year now who've had that kind of extremism. It used to be really common. It's definitely common in church circles to quote some Bible verses from like Second Corinthians and whatnot about a woman's obligation. It feels like that. Hopefully, that tide is turning a little bit. But the idea that you should just make sex happen, that it's glue, I think that's completely horrible thing to promote. It creates a level of expectancy and or expectations about the act of sex itself that really can't leave you anything but disappointed. Like if you're looking at each other emotionally and rejecting what you see and then trying to celebrate intimacy in its physical sexual form, like those, I don't see how those things can really connect. I'm asking you to be naked and vulnerable with me physically, but I've already rejected your emotional nakedness and vulnerability.
Perfect.
If I'm rejecting it, right? And vice versa. So yeah, both of us probably also talk to a lot of sexless marriage. And I think that's an element there too, is that what's missing is this other layer of intimacy that's a prerequisite. And it gets really hard for a man in a sexless marriage because he's so hurt by it that he walks around basically in this, woman, why won't you change? Right? You disappoint me. You're never there for me. You're letting me down. Can't you see how I have needs? You're a terrible human being because you won't sleep with me. And then when will you touch my wee wee again?
Yeah.
It's like,
Why can't I put my dick in you?
yeah, it's just that's not an appealing message to anybody, right? And there too, if a man was chased around talking about how bad of a human being he was, what kind of a disappointing man he was, how weak he was, how impotent he was, how poorly he was performing at work. And then a woman said, why won't you take me on a date? I think a man would understand this, right? He'd be like, I don't want to take you on a date. I don't want to be anywhere near you, right?
Exactly. That's a great analogy. Sometimes it's helpful for a man to know what the opposite of emotional safety is. And I had a lot of practice in my 28 years of marriage. My dad taught me how to be critical. He taught me how to be intellectually incisive in cutting and criticizing. He was good at doing that. He was great at using intellect as a way to demean other people. And I didn't like seeing him do it, but he taught me how to do it just by being how he was sometimes. And a lot of people are good at that. They're good at finding fault and putting it in words that sounds really cutting. And my ex-wife had a number of things that I personally found annoying. She wasn't as good with words as I was, and she would say the wrong word in place of the right word. She would spell things wrong on greeting cards. But later to find out she had more dyslexia than I ever knew about. She was she didn't solve problems the way I thought that she should be solved. She was never as logical as I thought she should be. And there was a few other things that I would pick on about the way she did something. And I used these things mostly when I was grieving the fact that she wasn't being as affectionate or sexual as I expected her to be. Whenever she did one of those things, like spell a word wrong or say something stupid, I would use that to minimize her, to insult her, criticize, be condescending, or somehow ridicule her. And this is something my dad taught me, is that it's easy to really hurt people by noticing those little flaws and making fun of them. I hate the fact I can remember there was a version of me that did that. I often say, if I could go back in time and just have a do-over on all those stupid, childish things I did, I wouldn't do it to try to get laid again or even to save that marriage. I would do it just because I don't like remembering the kind of guy who was so insecure. You would use people's flaws to demean them just because they're not treating you right. It felt so schoolboyish, so schoolyardish. So when guys say, well, I want more intimacy, I do say, do you know what the opposite of emotional safety is? Do you know how you have been poisoning emotional safety? And I tell them some of those things I just said, and a lot of them will go, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. I do the same thing. I make sex jokes at parties in front of my wife to see her blush, and then I complain that she doesn't give me sex in front of all the company, right? Enough guys talk about sex all the time in front of friends and complain about their sex life to their buddies, and she knows it. And he goes, well, why won't you have sex with me? Really? Seriously? Really? And so change that. You have the agency, you have the power to change that if you stop being so butthurt and trying to get even with her all the time.
Say more about why, in hindsight, you did those things from your understanding today.
I felt unloved. I felt unloved. I felt undesired, unappreciated. I had a very high libido, a very high desire for physical connection, to feel loved and like I belonged. And when I didn't get those needs met, I became angry and insecure. And I would say angry and insecure things to hurt her back. And I did it the only way I knew how, the way my dad taught me, was to use my language. I call it intellectual warfare, to catch her doing or saying something stupid. And even that word stupid, which a lot of women will hear that from a man's mouth. That was stupid. That sounds stupid. You're being stupid, or you are stupid. Oh my God. That cuts so deep, because a lot of women have grown up with dominant mothers or fathers who have made them feel inadequate, not good enough, and feeling stupid or unworthy. And the moment a husband starts using words like that, she goes right back into that childhood where she was never good enough. And now you want to fuck me, right? Really? Really? That's what you want?
That's going to be a pinch for a lot of people listening, I think.
A pinch?
A pinch, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I hear too, or just an outsider's point of view, is, or what I see, is a man who didn't really know how to really truly express his hurt. Because I don't think, and I know your story well enough to know, it's not that your desires for closeness and intimacy were wrong. It was, you had contempt, and you had animosity, some resentment, and it didn't really understand necessarily why, but more importantly, like how to effectively work through that. And so passive aggressive teardowns and intellectual warfare was your particular MO.
Yeah. And I wish I would have been more secure in myself to be able to see through her trauma, her childhood, and know that anything that comes at her is calling her silly, stupid, illogical, irrational, worthless. Any words like that will be the quickest way to have a woman want to leave not just my bed, but to leave my life, which she eventually wanted to do. You know? So yeah, we work with men who want to be more secure, more confident, more calm, more consistent in their energy, in their thinking, in the way they regard others, that they can be generous and curious enough to have other people feel safe and attracted to them, to want to be with them. This is where true intimacy comes from, when you build that trust. but you have to trust yourself enough to be a leader, I think. And that's what we
Yeah,
create.
tie that back into anxious attachment. What is, because you mentioned that's the largest demographic we work with individually in our practices is generally anxiously attached men who are not feeling very connected. They're not experiencing very satisfying intimacy, even if it's frequent. They don't feel loved. They don't feel valued. How is that guy supposed to get to the place that you just described?
That
And
calm,
realizing,
confident, consistent. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because I mean, a man listening like that is asking himself that question. Yeah, but how?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's so hard for them to know how, because the how is more of a what. He's been doing how for years. He got good grades, captain of the football team, went to college, became an engineer, a doctor, a pilot, a lawyer. He made money, started a business. He's been providing. Now he has the 4 trucks and the 5-bedroom house. And he's done all this stuff to create a shell of confidence. And I always call that cotton candy confidence. That type of security where I feel good about myself, that's not real confidence. That's manufactured confidence that you do by doing shit, learning shit, knowing shit, becoming highly regarded, highly educated, highly
Mm-hmm.
rewarded, paid. And that's the shallowest kind. You could do that blindfolded. Dudes are good at performing in order to get recognition and acknowledgement, right? But what's that's missing for the guy, that guy who's still anxious and insecure and complaining about his sex life and not being loved, even though he's done all that stuff, it is a more spiritual journey of knowing that his worthiness, his strength as a man, his spiritual connectedness to masculinity and the role that plays in a love relationship, that's at a higher level that nobody's ever taught him. This is what we bring to the party, is helping them understand that there is a place of security, worthiness, self-reliance, right, and maturity inside of you that doesn't come from anybody but you and your belief system, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, you're screwed. If you believe that women need to give that to you, that your parents were supposed to give that to you, you're kind of screwed, because you're going to be trying all the old ways to get the attention you want. You want to get rewarded. You want the gold star. You want the trophy, which when you're married is sex. Give me the trophy. Show me I'm a winner.
I call this thing you're talking about peacocking, which is, it's a man's walking around with his feathers out. And the hardest thing to help a man in this spot understand is you're looking for the thing that if you do will make her do, right? And that's the shift you have to get away from, is there's never been a solution in her to begin with. It's living in that do have be mindset of like, if I do enough, I'll finally have enough. I'll have the right feathers. And when I have enough feathers, I'll finally earn her love and affection and her adoration and respect and appreciation, worthiness, not realizing it's always been your deficit of that has made you look outside to her to begin with. And it's not attractive. So this is a really hard shift for men in this spot to make. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's actually a really simple shift. It just takes, I don't know what the magic is sometimes to help a man have that aha moment where he's like, right, I'm looking out there for a change in her so I can have a new internal reality. And you're saying I've got to have a new internal reality and then I'll have a new change in my externals? Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's what we're
And
saying.
it's like, a lot of guys can't comprehend it. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of nasty comments from men sometimes when they hear that. They do not like that message.
There's a very simple saying that if nothing changes, nothing's going to change. But if something changes, something will change. So in order for a guy to want to be that change, to say, you know what, I really want that. I really want that change. I want to be that guy. I want to be the kind of guy who's internally calm and confident and consistent and self-reliant and emotionally strong. I want to not just baby people. I want to believe in people. I want to lead with generosity and curiosity from a place that's so full inside, with no emptiness inside me. And then I'll say, do you know anybody like that? You just described something amazing. Who do you know like that? And a lot of guys will say, well, wasn't my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I only had one other person who kind of was that man. I've done an audio meditation on my uncle, Larry. He was more like that than anybody. He had a temper. but he also had an incredible sense of peace and calmness, self-reliance, internal confidence, never rattled, always responded to things, even crazy stuff, in a very measured way. I really admired his predictability and his stability, even more so than my dad. But if you've never had that modeled for you, if you don't know one person in your life who has that, what are you going to do? Well, this is one reason we started the business. We wanted to become men like that. And then we wanted to teach other men how to be men like that. The whole purpose of our communities is to help foster that way of thinking and way of being in order to have the life you want. You start with who you are, not with what you want. You start with who
Yeah.
you are.
And I would add to that, the fact that you want something like that as a man is the evidence that it's already there. It just needs to be wooed out because, you don't know what you don't know. So if I know that that's possible, there's some part of me that knows this, right? That knows it's a part of me. And I find that to be tremendously good news because if you can long for it, in some sense, you already possess it. You hear what I'm saying?
Oh, I
So
know.
that was really good news the first time I heard that concept. I was like, that's actually really true. Like, how do I know what confidence is? It's if I see something in a person like you and I say, oh, that's confidence. How do I know? I must know what confidence is, right? If I see strength, there's a part of me that must know what that is. And so once you get that idea, hey, I already have these things. It's not what do I need to add to life, I think. What do I need to take away? What's getting in the way of me being this part of me that I know I would really love to be? And I have found being around other men like that the secret sauce for sure. I do think we tend to become behaviorally like everybody we spend the most amount of time with. And that can be challenging if a man hasn't connected with other men. I didn't think they existed until I met you and you invited me to a community at the time. And I remember being like, there's people like this. It was quite eye-opening, and it of course changed the trajectory of my life. And then, of course, today we both have communities of men like this. But
Yeah. And full
uh,
transparency, the reason we do videos and podcasts like this, for the person listening to this right now, and yes, I'm talking to you, whoever's listening to this, we're in an hour and 3 minutes into this conversation, and you're still here. Why are you still here? It's because you're hearing things that you know are inside you. If you're hearing something that you've always wanted to talk about or always thought about or felt like maybe it was too deep to bring up, but you're here still because you love it, you're in the right place. This is your jam. This is your tribe. And that's exactly how I felt when I started this work. I knew when I found my tribe, guys were talking about the stuff I was afraid to talk about, but I love talking.
yeah, we have a lot of people listening like this, and it was quite surprising to me starting the podcast how many men they'll listen 8, 9 times the same episode. There's a lot of women that are listening to the same episodes over and over and over again. In fact, in our 35 and over demographic, I'm sorry, in 25 to 35-year-olds, it's almost 100% women that listen to
Wow.
this. Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
That's interesting, and of course, I get a lot of good feedback from female listeners about this that they also feel like, wow, there's men talking like this. So that's cool. What are some other yeah buts you think that come up? Just kind of getting back to the click and clackishness about this. What other yeah buts are common about emotional safety and this kind of message about going first and putting away your reactivity and learning to offer acceptance?
One of my favorite yeah buts is that this just sounds like a whole lot of work. Shouldn't this be easier than this? This sounds like you're asking an awful lot of men to do all this. And I always grin because when guys do this work, what they figure out is that what they were doing before was the hard part. The defending, the accusing, the arguing, the fighting, the justifying, all of that shit, all of the hand waving and stuff that they were doing in reaction to what they were not getting, that was the work. What we're asking you to do is less of what you've ever done before. We're asking you to learn how to shut the fuck up and stop thinking everything's a fight. We're asking you to stop taking everything so personally. We're asking you to stop thinking stupid thoughts that make you stay awake at night. We're asking you to do less than you've ever done before and relax into something that's a little bit more powerful. And that is knowing that you're already a confident, secure, calm, consistent man, except for your thinking. So this is where the guys go, oh, really? Is it that easy? It really is, because there's a point in this work where a guy goes, about 3 months ago, you told me something. It didn't click until right now. I finally get what you mean by less is more. I finally got it. I didn't know what it meant the first time. And we always say, yeah, I know. We knew it was going to take you 3 months to get it because
Yeah.
it did for you and me. It took for you and me that long.
Yeah, sure. If you think about something, if you have something in your life that you do not believe is secure, you're going to devote a lot of time, energy, and focus to trying to keep it secure. And so when you make that thing secure, all of the time, energy, and focus and that you were giving to that process is now reclaimed. I have this problem in my practice. I'm curious if you do. And it's usually at around 4 to 6 months where guys are like, hey, something's wrong. We're like, what? They're like, I don't know. I don't feel all the stuff. And what they're encountering is they have been used to giving so much anxious attention and energy to something that when that stops, it's eerily quiet in their internal landscape, and the absence of all of that decades of anxious, jibber jabber on their insides about thinking about what she's thinking about and thinking about what other people are thinking about, what they might be thinking about. It's like you give so much mental energy to try to control your insecurity. You don't realize how much of your life you give away to this. And when that silence is, it's spooky actually at first, because you're used to constantly thinking. Do you ever talk to guys about this?
Just this morning, I had a client call with a guy, very powerful. He's in the medical profession, very successful financially. When I said, when you first invested your first $1,000, let's say it was the only $1,000 you had, and you put it in the stock market, how often did you look at the Dow Jones? He goes, like every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, I'm taking the temperature. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Oh, my. Oh, that's great. No, that's not great. Oh, it should. Always taking the temperature. And he goes, when you finally learn that at some point in your investing life that you just keep putting your $100 a month in, and you just go get on your boat and go fishing, and then put your next $100 in, and you just trust that there's a process at work here that will work if you just stop worrying about it. But a lot of us can relate to looking at, Bitcoin every day. Is it up or down? Is the market up or down? Oh my God. And how incredibly mathematically stupid it is to take the temperature of the market on an hourly basis or even a weekly basis. Men take the temperature of their relationship all the time. They're sticking a probe up her butt to find out, are we okay? Is this good? You like me now? You like me now? How about now? Are we good?
But they're doing it with her facial expressions
Exactly.
and their wife's emotional temperature. And let's relate that back to safety, because I would say that's another hallmark behavior that you're not emotionally safe, is that you're constantly monitoring the emotional temperature of other people, because you're doing that to establish your own wellness baseline today. And it puts in a tremendous amount of, I'm just going to call it bondage, because if a person learns that your facial expressions, their facial expressions and emotional temperature today is responsible for you today, then they start feeling like they have to hide. They can't be themselves. They can't walk out into the kitchen groggy, or they can't have a sour look on their face because they have indigestion. They feel like they have to hide themselves entirely because you're triggered by it, because you'll say, what's wrong? And you'll go into a determine the relationship conversation, and you'll ask these, are we okay? And the irony of that is that's the exact opposite direction of intimacy, because now the person that you want to be intimate with is trying to figure out, how can I avoid them seeing me, because they can't handle it, and because I'm tired of being used as a thermometer for their well-being, right?
And for the guy at the 4 month mark who's saying that things seem weird now, it's awful quiet these days, he's not yet trusting the process. Well, I was talking about making $100 deposits into an investment account. What you're doing now at 4 months is you're making deposits into an emotional bank account. It's a term Stephen Covey came up with. The process of being in love, having a love relationship, a romantic sexual relationship, requires a very systematic, consistent depositing of goodwill, right? We call it positive high regard, goodwill, and knowing that this process, even on a bad day when her facial expressions, her mood, her snappiness seem to be out of order, it's just a market blip. Know that you have to know that you're investing properly and everything is okay. And when you stop overreacting to everything, you stop worrying about what's going on right now. If you're
I love
insecure,
that.
you can't do that. You can't do it if you're insecure because
Yeah, like if we use the investment metaphor, the anxiously attached person who's not emotionally safe is the investor that always buys high and sells low because all of their deposits and withdrawals are reactive to the market conditions, right? And so what I hear you saying is the man who's becoming emotionally safe is saying, I'm making deposits today because it's what I value, not based on what the market condition is. I'm a man that values depositing love into this person's life, into this relationship, not because they're behaving a certain way, but it's because who I like to be. It's what I want. I have a cadence of I'm going to show up and be like this today, and I don't need to know what the market conditions are. I get a lot of pushback. I know you do too about this. I'll offer some yeah buts. Yeah, but if I don't react, I'm letting her walk all over me. What do you say to that guy?
I like the phrase walking all over me. Shouldn't I have some boundaries? I mean, when is she taking advantage of me? And when
Or
you're insecure,
yeah, at what point?
at what point? At
I should
what
write a book
point?
with that title. At what point?
At what point do I deserve to stand up for myself? And this is where we talk about having non-negotiable terms of yourself, what you expect of yourself. But when you get down to it, unless somebody is threatening you with a knife, or if you catch your wife in the middle of a steamy affair, most of marriage is just a bunch of little behavioral annoyances. If you believe you're being taken advantage of or you're a walking ATM and nobody appreciates you, you're going to be trying to find a battle every single day. So, to directly answer the question, at what point should I stand up for myself? I normally say at some point, if somebody is being destructive verbally or destructive energetically or even physically being destructive. Like one guy told me his wife was hitting on him the other night, just actually slapping on him, not his face, but you know that thing, you
I
poopy head.
have actually had men
Yeah.
who've been hit. I've had men had boiling liquids poured on them. There's
Oh,
a,
yeah.
I've heard from men in a lot of ways. And anyway, keep going.
I just, it's very clear that you have to stand up for yourself and defend yourself in physical attacks. Other forms of attacks are personal, poisonous, vicious, verbal character assassination attacks. That's usually a place where you would draw a line and just remove yourself from a situation. You're never going to argue yourself through anything like that. You're just going to have to remove yourself. But for the most part, everyday relationship grievances is nothing more than just an expression of not feeling loved, an expression of frustration, an expression of insecurity. And if you're an insecure person, you're going to want to fight with that all the time.
Yeah, you're going to keep seeing your insecurities and everything. I have literally had men say, but she went to bed without saying goodnight. And they equated that with abuse. And this is the problem. If, because we project our inner drama into the outside world, if we feel horrible, we perceive everybody's actions that way, right? So my own personal way to look at this is just my line is where the place where for me to go another step forward in that situation requires that I erode myself. It makes me a party to my own demise, right? There's a lot of this insecure men have this like kind of macho idea like you're going to let her talk to you like that? And I kind of laugh at that because there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. And the idea that I can make them all talk to me a certain way is kind of laughable for me. But also, I would rather be a man who's not perturbed when people say things. Like, why should the words coming out of your mouth have the power to impact my internal well-being, right?
Unless it's the one woman on the planet you sleep with, because her words have a particular amount of weight to them.
Yeah. But I would say after 33 years of relationship, interestingly, when I became a man that her words stopped bothering me, the words that used to bother me also stopped. It's kind of this weird voodoo kind of thing. Like, it's almost like that was happening because I needed the training ground. I didn't enjoy them, believe me, and I really wanted them to stop. But my methodology had been I need to just badger her to stop talking to me this way. But in reality, when I stopped being perturbed by them, they stopped. And I'm not exaggerating. I've not had an argument with Zelda in almost 7 years of any kind of substance. There's no teardowns, no nastiness. We certainly have what I would call garden variety conflict. But remember, I see all that as foreplay generally. So I'm not perturbed by that. But no, none of this nastiness. And for me, it wasn't by telling her my huge list of boundaries. It was just by living in those things I just shared. That was
Yeah.
pretty effective for me.
Yeah.
So here, how about some other ones? Here's one. Yeah, but I'm only human. How am I supposed to stay calm when she's freaking out?
Do you want to answer that one? You want me to
I
start?
want you to. Yeah.
I'm only human. How am I supposed to stay calm? And then we'll say, well, you shouldn't take everything so personal, into which they'll say, it sounded pretty damn personal to me. How could you not take
She
it?
even said it was about me, man.
She even said it was about me, man. I don't know. The path to maturity is seeing that not every fight that gets started has to be, joined. You don't have to join every fight that gets started. When you're on a playground and somebody's fighting with you, you're going to throw sand back in their face. When we become more mature, more stable, more secure men, you see that these attacks that are being made at you that feel so personal are really being done to defend a feeling or something they've got going on. You stop feeling like everything is an actual assassination of your worthiness. And so when we ask a guy to grow up, right, what we're asking is to see that what she's doing is for herself right now. Right now, what she's trying to express is a feeling, a fear, an anxiety, something where she just doesn't feel like she can take the blame and she's going to poke it at you. Now, I told a guy, this is a client just the other day, he said, when I finally told her that here's my response. Here's my response to everything you just said. On points 1, 2, and 3, you've got a valid point. I was a bit of a dick then. On points 4, 5, and 6, you're totally off. You just made those up. Those aren't even true. I'll own the first 3. The second 3 you got to own. And she calmed down right away. It's like, wait a minute. He took total ownership for being a dick on the first 3. And he's kind of right that I made up the second 3. And so what he did was calmly just say that, no, this is what I believe is happening right now. He said what happened after that is that after the last little tirade, she came in for a hug and then rolled over in bed on top of him. And for the first time in 2 weeks, they made love. It's because he doesn't get rattled by the emotion, the feeling attacked, right? So what the yeah but was, what if it, how am I not supposed to take it personal? It felt pretty personal. I'm just human. You're just human, but realize that you're a human who can choose to see things differently. It's
Right.
like the guys, the road ragers. We all see videos of road ragers, and these are adult guys. They've got baseball bats, guns in their cars. They're out to settle the score with all of the drivers in the world, right? We all know what's going on with those guys. They've got some real problems. Husbands can be road ragers too. And I don't want to be a road raging husband.
Yeah, I find that there's a couple practical things to this. First is to recognize, well, all humans have impulses, emotional impulses. And at least when I'm speaking, I can't speak for you. I'm not telling a man, stop experiencing emotions or stop experiencing emotional impulses, but to realize that we have this thing called choice. We have agency. We can feel something and still choose differently. And it's imperative for mature humans that they do this, that they say, okay, yeah, I feel this. I feel like I want to shout, scream. I feel XYZ. And, part of being emotionally mature is learning to witness that impulse and even name it as precisely as you can. And maybe even say, I'm feeling really disappointed right now. I'm feeling really frustrated right now, without blame and without the following impulse that you have to react. So it's like it's impulse control, right? I mean, I feel agitated when somebody cuts me off in traffic, just like a road rager, but I'm not going to follow through with that by saying, where's my gun, right? Where's the baseball bat? I'm going to feel the same, beginning things as a lot of other people would, but it's realizing we have it. So I find it really helpful just to even give yourself 90 seconds to 2 minutes just to Like breathe through the first 90 minutes, not 90 minutes, the first 90 minutes, 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and just let yourself feel what you feel, watch it, name it. And you can even just tell a woman in your life, hey, I just need a second. I'm feeling some intense things. Give me a minute. And then let that pass. It allows your brain to, kind of calm back down and realize there's no emergency, and then keep going. And to me, that's emotionally safe. The emotional safety is not feeling, but learning to feel while maintaining your sense of sovereignty over your person, so that the other person learns they can bring their complex emotions to you and you can handle it, that you're not undone, right? What are your favorite metaphors for emotional safety?
The favorite one I have is for animals. Most guys have a very, very natural empathy toward animals. They accept a tremendous amount of responsibility and ownership for creating an environment in which an animal can trust and feel safe. And if the animal is acting weird, knowing that there is something you can do to help it. This is not to call women animals. This is not meant to minimize the value uh, of your wife. It's meant to have you realize that inside you is a power. And women know men have this power. Men know women have a power to make you feel safe or not safe. And if you're the kind of person who wants to make other people feel safe in your presence, you realize it doesn't take a whole lot. However, if you're insecure around a horse, the horse will be nothing but nervous. If you're insecure around dogs, I hate dogs, I'm afraid of dogs, I never like dogs. Dogs are going to pick up on it and they're going to start feeding it back to you and be a reflection of your own insecurity. But if you have an empathy in you that feels like, I want to be the kind of person that women, children, and animals all gravitate toward. I want to be a beacon of safety, a lighthouse of emotional groundedness. I want that for myself. If you want that, then you do the work and you don't begrudge the process of learning how to be that. You want to be it. That's the best metaphor I know, is knowing the places in your life where you enjoy being that person. Again, this metaphor breaks down when you put a woman with two breasts and one vagina in front of you, the one you married, and the only woman out of the 7 billion people in the world you're allowed to touch. You give away all of your power and your sense of self because you believe that she now has more power than you to create happiness. And this is what we teach you how to stop doing. Once you stop that, everything gets easier. The struggle
Mm-hmm.
stops.
Yeah, you mentioned the lighthouse. That's probably my favorite metaphor. Just to think like a lighthouse instead of seeing yourself as a rowboat on a raging ocean, which is how I think most men show up
Yeah.
in relationships.
The lighthouse never rushes out into the storm to calm it down. The lighthouse stays in its bedrock. It's good.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
here. It's safe here.
It never asks the ocean, "Are we okay?
Are we okay?
Did I do something wrong?" Yeah,
Yeah. So I know you mentioned earlier when we were talking about the book that you and I did together, The Narcissist or Not. Somebody who read the book Narcissist or Not told us this book isn't as much a book about narcissism as it is about male security. And
yeah,
so much of this book that we enjoy putting together is about everything we've talked about so far here. It's about, you get accused of this. This is what's happening, and this
yeah.
is what's happening inside of you. I would love for guys to get their hands on this.
It really is a book about emotional safety and overcoming insecurity. But as you know, most of us don't know we have that problem, and so a lot of men right now are finding out because somebody's calling them a narcissist. I had one client that said we should have titled it "Why Your Wife Doesn't Like You." I thought that's a terrific book title. Maybe next time. So yeah, maybe we'll republish it. So yeah, for anybody listening, if you want to find out more about that book, you can go to narcissistornot.com. And we even have a cool assessment there that you can take to see kind of like just how insecure you are and what narcissist labels you might be finding yourself adorning to pretty soon if you don't address that. Yeah, that was a fun book to write. That's almost been a year now, you know.
Really, that's true. It was last spring.
Well, it's coming up. Well, we started talking about it last spring and we wrote it in August. So we're getting there. Yeah. So hopefully we'll have an audiobook version of that soon. We got to work on that project.
To hear these voices.
Yeah. I was thinking if I could get Mike Rowe to read all of the parts, like the main parts, and then you and I could do our handwritten parts, that would be kind of cool.
Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs. Mike Rowe?
Yeah, I just really like his voice. He's got a cool voice. He's a cool guy. Any last words or insights about emotional safety?
For any guy wondering, why would I do this? This sounds like a lot of work. This sounds like a lot of responsibility. Sounds like you're blaming me. The one thing I want the listener to know is that the only reason to do this work is for you to wake up with a smile on your face every day, because you know that you're the man you want to be. You have a chronic sense of contentment and confidence in who you are and how you show up. This is not to game the system, not to get people to love you. This is an internal journey that affects your long-term happiness. So if you're thinking this is a lot of work, I don't know if the payoff is going to be good enough. The payoff has nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
The payoff is an internal payoff. And that's where you and I have come from over the last decade, is just knowing that this is worth it for everything inside me. And when you get there, things around you change.
Personal transformation is definitely the reward. I would see relationship changes as just a side effect. Because
very predictable side effect.
The emotional safety I extend to those around me is really just my internal safety with self, if you think about it. So for me, that's the reward, because to get to the place of addressing your insecurities like this, what you end up coming to is a bedrock of self-acceptance that nobody can take from you. And to me, that's what the journey is about. It's not about becoming emotionally safe. It's about addressing all the reasons you really don't accept yourself and you don't love yourself, because all of that is making you seek outside for something that you've always possessed within. And if you come to that, like if you come to the awareness that I have everything I need, I'm okay, I'm more than okay, I'm enough, I'm worthy, that's a hugely rewarding way to live, whether or not you're ever in a relationship again, because it's the relationship with yourself. And that's what we're really about, right?
Yeah.
But most guys don't want to hear that on day one.
Well, it leads me to the last metaphor, which is that if you're a coffee cup sitting on a saucer and you're only half full, and you're chronically half full, and you're always going to other people and women to try to top off your coffee cup. When you talked about a bedrock of self-acceptance, I love that phrase you used, a bedrock of self-acceptance, you're filling up your own coffee cup all the time. And what's happening, it's overflowing into the saucer around it. And that's what you give other people. They come to drink out of the moat around you. And if you're trying to live a life where you're half full, expecting other people to top you off, they'll get very tired of it very soon, because they'll see that it keeps draining out all the time. Being a bedrock of self-acceptance is self-sourcing, self-fulfilling.
Yeah. I mean, and so just if anybody out there listening, if you're like, how do I know if I need this? I would say that the dead giveaway that you're living in a cup half full is that you have resentment, contempt, animosity towards somebody else in your life, and that you're spending most of your time thinking about how other people need to change.
Perfect.
And if that's you, I would say consider this your invitation to learn how to fill that cup. Steve, where can people connect with you if they're really drawn to you and listen to this conversation about how to fill that cup? What's the best way for a man to reach out to you?
Just the website, goodguys2greatmen.com, with the number 2 in between, goodguys2greatmen.com. Lots of options in their courses, community access, all of that stuff, one-on-one coaching, if that's a desire. That's the place.
All right. Yep. And I'll put our information, as always, in the bottom for connecting with us at Masterful Men too. So, hey, I appreciate you being here. This is fun.
Yeah. Thanks for the conversation.
The next things we might talk about, we'll have a conversation about paternalism and talking about women like animals. We'll see how many controversial things we can talk about in one episode.
Yeah. Let's check out the comments on this one. Thank you, Sven. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Masterful Man podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're ready to break free from stuckness, build unshakable confidence, and lead your life with unstoppable purpose, I invite you to take the next step. Join a community of men who are committed to growth, challenge, and real transformation. Learn more at www.masterful.men, because the life you want starts with the man you choose to become.